Welcome back, everyone. Next up, we have Recon Africa Limited. It trades on the OTCQX under the symbol RECAF and on the TSXV under the symbol RECO. It is a Canadian oil and gas company. We're happy to welcome President and CEO Brian Reinsborough and SVP of Exploration Chris Zabrinski. Welcome, gentlemen, to the conference today.
Thank you very much. Happy to be here.
All right, the floor is yours. Call me back when you're ready for questions.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody. We're going to be describing to you our company, Recon Africa. Currently, we're embarking on a multi-well exploration drilling program onshore Namibia that will walk through and provide some background. Please take your time to look at the forward-looking statements and any information there, as well as our disclosure regarding prospective resources that we'll be talking about. So I want to start with this slide here, which is a corporate snapshot. And I came in as CEO a little over a year ago to really with the mandate to look at this company and reshape it in every shape and form. And we've been doing that. Chris Zabrinski, who will speak in just a few moments, came in about 3 months after I did and took over the exploration program. He'll walk through his thought process in terms of developing an exploration inventory. But I get asked a lot as CEO, what's new at Recon? And my answer to the investors is everything is. It's a brand new company in every shape and form. I want to start the left-hand side of the slide, just a corporate snapshot. I'll talk about my experienced management team around us. What's really important in our oil and gas sector is track record. And myself and Chris in particular have a track record of finding a lot of oil and turning around organizations. So I'm just very pleased with the team around me. We're onshore Namibia. We're describing a concession of the very northern part of Namibia. We're active right now, drilling a really high impact well that will open up a whole new trend. And we also have some contiguous acreage over in Botswana that we'll get to in the years down the road. What both Chris and I like about this area is the petroleum system's working up here. And when you go into a region to open up new plays, you really want to make sure that there's oil in the basin. And the previous group drilled a number of wells that indicated they have oil shows, and we have gas seeps on a concession. So the petroleum system has been de-risked. Now we're just trying to find commercial quantities of it. I'll talk through in just a few moments our financing strategy. We put in place a business-based financing that really gives us runway to execute our plans. So we'll talk about that as well. And the drilling program started in July of this year. So on the right-hand side, what's new? New CEO, new general counsel. I brought in with me on my business partner for almost 20 years. We developed a new strategy. I quickly brought in Chris Zabrinski, an oil finder who's found a lot of oil around the continent, and he brought with him a technical team. I'm now working on the board of directors, reshaping the governance structure and bringing in industry experienced directors to help steer the company as well. I've cleaned up the company a lot. We had assets in Mexico, sold them, put some cash in treasury and took some liabilities off the balance sheet. Really, we did that to become a pure play West Africa E&P company. So we've done that. We took care of some hair in the company historically, and we streamlined the organization by reducing costs over a couple of times. And really, Chris and I have been implementing a cultural change of performance within the company. So, when you look at Recon, we call this Recon 2.0, but it's a different company completely from what you may have experienced previously. I have a great team around me. I'll let Chris introduce himself in just a moment, but I brought my general counsel with me, the third guy in this slide, Adam Rubin. We've been together for 20 years. We raised $2 billion together, our previous company, and started 2 previous programs. So this is our third go-around on reshaping the company. The lady in the middle, I'd like to spend a moment just introducing her. She was my SVP of Stakeholder Relations Communications. Honorable Diana McQueen. She just moved up to be chair of the board as part of my restructure of the board. Diana has quite a pedigree. She was Minister of Energy for Alberta, also Minister of Environment and Water and Municipal Affairs. So she has a great pedigree in the Alberta energy sector and very well suited to speak to ministers around the world, actually. Chris Zabriskie came on board. I'll let him talk in just a moment. I had a very close colleague at Anadarko, and I went to him and told him about my new role and asked him who was Anadarko's rainmaker during the years they were discovering a lot of oil. And he gave me a list of one, which was Chris. So Chris, why don't you quickly introduce yourself and your background, and then I'll proceed from there.
Yeah, good day, everyone. I'm going to keep it short so we can get to the real important information on the technical side. But my name is Chris Zabriskie, 20 years with Anadarko, primarily working exploration on in the international realm. Basically worked 40 different countries with Anadarko, and 14 of those were actually in Africa. So Africa does feel a little bit like my backyard, and Namibia is a really unique place because the above ground risks that we normally deal with in Africa don't exist here. And we can talk about that in a little bit more detail at a later point. But that's a quick introduction, and we'll move on to the technical here in a few minutes.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. Just a little bit of background myself. I've been in the sector for 35 years, 20 of it running programs in the deepwater Gulf of Mexico. Made about 18 discoveries in that basin over that period of time, including 2 giant discoveries. This will be my third turnaround. I've worked. My first turnaround was coming in as a president CEO of Nexen USA and turned that organization around. 2011, I went on my own and started my own private equity-backed company. Over the next 3 years, I raised $2.5 billion for that company. And that remains the high watermark, by the way, of a privately owned company with no assets. We were just a team with a great strategy and found a lot of oil, but 2.5 billion barrels over my career. So when I talk to investors about Recon, what is our principles of our investment? And how we differentiate ourselves is that we believe we're drilling a very high impact exploration inventory. And what we're really doing is drilling deep water potential, but with the onshore cost structure. And what I mean by that is we're drilling prospects that are anywhere from 200 million barrels up to 500 million barrels of resource potential. In deep water, you drill those wells often, and those wells will cost about $150 million a piece. We're chasing the same resource size, and our drilling cost structure is anywhere from $10 to $15 million a piece. So fundamentally different cost structure that gives us great returns and a lot of runway. We're opening up a new play that Chris will talk about in just a moment, the Demerara Foe Belt. Our first well in the entire Foe Belt is drilling right now. And it really, if it works, it opens up several billion barrels in front of us. As an exploration company, when you go into a region, you really want to make sure you have monetization options. The last thing you want to do is find a lot of oil or gas and be landlocked. Being in the northern Namibia, we have the benefit of having infrastructure nearby. Roads through our concession, electrical lines through our concession, and also rail close by. That means we can deploy an early production system in the case of finding any liquids by virtue of trucking and rail to the coastline. In the case that we find gas, we're ideally located and for both local, regional, and global markets. And I'll talk through that in just a moment. The green box on the bottom sort of addresses the cost structure advantage, and that cost structure is not only dollars, but it's time. In deep water, you may find 500 million barrels. So it's going to take you 7 to 9 years to bring that online, just by virtue of having to build, drill, and lay a pipeline. For us, that cycle time is probably less than 3 years. In fact, if we feel we find liquids on this first well, we believe we can have early production on as early as 2027. So great cycle time advantage and low F&D gives great returns to our investors. This is a slide that we put together that sort of summarizes what we've done in the last year. It's the title, Delivering a New Strategy, but I call this slide Walking the Talk. And it goes through everything we've told the street we're going to do. And once we told the street something, we've actually delivered on it. Starting on the left-hand side, I came in of August last year. I brought Chris and his group early October. New technical team. We sold the assets. We prioritized our exploration inventory. Company had some historical civil cases I needed to get rid of in the rearview mirror. We took care of that. I streamlined the organization, and now I'm enhancing the governance structure. So we've delivered a lot of what we told the street in terms of how we're going to turn around this company. In the bottom part, below that orange arrow, really starts to talk about our financing strategy. As you very well know, many small cap companies do what I call activity-based financing. They go out and raise $3 to $5 million for a well, or $5 million for G&A. I want to change that paradigm. I want to underwrite our business. So we embarked on a joint venture process late last year. In April, I went out and raised $17 million on an equity raise. We spud our Nagopo well as planned. I signed a joint venture at the end of April, and we did another equity raise of almost $40 million in the end of July. So roughly just under $60 million into the company over a 2 or 3 month period. And that's noticeable in the small cap business. But we achieved one thing. We achieved our principles of underwriting the business, where we have now a runway to execute our strategy. For those of you that may not be too familiar with Namibia, I'll spend just a few moments on this slide, and I'll start at the top left and go clockwise. Chris mentioned he's worked a lot of countries in Namibia. Namibia is a great place to do business. It's Africa for beginners, what a lot of people say. It's a very friendly business environment. The democracy there is very stable, multi-party. When you go in country, it's actually very pro-business culture, we find. They really want to have the energy sector evolve. And the banking system there is fairly high developed. The commercial framework is attractive. We look around the globe, sometimes you're in very, very difficult, cumbersome financial or commercial terms that are sometimes hard to understand. This one's very transparent. It's a tax royalty system. 35% corporate tax, 5% royalty that escalates with returns. And we also carry the local government by 10% until commercialization. Legally, international arbitration, that's really important for us. And the second point here is the corruption index. This is very favorable. This is as good as Denmark and Netherlands region. So you don't feel that you're going to be blindsided by anything in country when you go there. The top right-hand side sort of outlines a little bit of what's gone on in Namibia in the last 3 or 4 years. I'm sure many of you are aware of the offshore success in the Orange Basin. Just in the last 24 to 30 months, there's been over 11 billion barrels discovered, 8 TCF of gas. But what's notable here is who's playing offshore. It's some of the largest companies in the world. And they've invested tens of billions of dollars up to this point, and it probably will invest multiples of that going forward to bring this oil and gas online. Now, we're onshore, different geological play, but what this gives me great comfort in, the players who are at the table, that the Namibian government's going to work with industry. They're going to get this right. They have to. The resource potential offshore is remarkable, as we feel the resource potential onshore is even equally attractive. Bottom left-hand side is our philosophy. It all starts with technical work with rocks. We need good rocks. Low cost, get great returns. And the plays we're looking at, we have fairly good reservoirs to deliver hydrocarbons. Porosity is 29%. Permeability is a half a Darcy. That's over the rift play, so we think we're really well situated there to have good rocks with good deliverability. Low cost, I've talked about. Our operating costs onshore, about $25 a barrel, all in. 11 of that is transportation, getting a barrel of oil from our concession to the coastline. And the drilling costs I mentioned earlier, anywhere from $6 million to $12 million for a rift well for $6 and a Demerara full well for $12 million. And that gives F&D that are just really attractive, probably top tier in the industry, well below $6 a barrel. So that gives great returns. And I look at returns by looking at 3 levers. I look at the PV10, I look at the MOIC, and I look at payout. If we can get those 3 pillars of the value sort of triangulated, then you're in a good spot to create a lot of value for the company and for our shareholders. The bottom right is sort of philosophy. We have a single well profile here. This is from the rift play, and the one I know may be hard to see, but the dotted line is the important one. And that is the cumulative oil that we'll get from any single well. Any single well here in the rift play, we modeled a 3 million barrels of oil recoverable. Now, just for reference, we're drilling a $6 million well. to get those 3 million barrels. Now, for reference for those of you in the U.S., the average U.S. well right now recovers about 600,000 barrels of oil. So we're multiples of that in our RIF plan. Now, you just can't do it with one well. You need to have an inventory, and that's what that pyramid shows, the inventory in the Demerara Fold Belt, which we have a lot of prospects identified. Just very quickly, we just concluded a joint venture. We have a partner now, BW Energy. They're a Norwegian listed company, big player offshore. Their market cap is about $800 to $1 billion. They're owned 75% by BW Group. BW Group is a private group out of Singapore. The largest shipping company of liquefied petroleum product on water, about 500 vessels, and a market cap, we believe, in excess of $30 billion. So some deep pockets. We sold 20% to our concession to these guys. They carried us on some wells, and we're delighted to have them in the program. The capital that we brought in this deal is as follows. They committed $16 million up front. That was initially CapEx on the promote on wells and seismic. They took a long look at Recon. They ended up converting that commitment into equity, so they actually bought into 6.5% of the company. Stage two is we have additional $22 million proceeds coming in on warrants. This will be exercised 6 months after the deal, so we have a potential additional influx of money coming in once the stock reaches a certain price. The next tranche of capital is $45 million. They already checked upon the commerciality, and that really is designed to carry Recon all the way through to first production. Next tranche is production bonuses. They are obligated to pay us up to $80 million, $5 million on first oil, and then $25 million payments based on certain cash flow multiples. So in aggregate, we sold 20% of our concession for about $163 million US, or roughly $200 million Canadian. We're really pleased with this deal structure. We achieved what we wanted, which is a very experienced operator in country with deep pockets. And we also achieved the objective of having money coming into all phases of the value chain, in exploration and in development and in production. So we're very pleased with having these guys at the table. This is the capital structure. I'm not going to go through it too much. I'll leave it to your own. Where market cap's roughly around $250 million Canadian. Our stock has moved a lot. It tends to move quite a lot when we're drilling, and we expect that to happen as we get near the completion of our existing well. Bottom left-hand side, so it's this year, the trading history. We raised money back in April at 90 cents. The stock went up to $1.80 about 2 months later, and we saw a little bit of slide with this big round that we just put more shares in the market. But we tend to move fairly significantly when we're drilling. With this slide here, I'll describe this slide and turn it over to Chris. This is our landscape up in the northern part of Namibia. That green squiggly line is the river between Angola to the north and Namibia to the south. Those red stars are gas seeps under concession. The ones of particular interest are on the west side. Chris and I have actually been out and looked at these. These are gas seeps that have liquid content. We've sampled them. And the two plays we're after are showing those polygons. The main one we're going to talk about today is the Demerara Fold Belt. This was a fold belt that was imaged for the first time ever by a seismic program. The seismic program was shot showing that blue background, that little fence diagram. But we imaged a really well defined fold belt, and we have some 23 prospects identified. They're large in extent. Chris will walk through in just a moment. We had an external auditor come in and look at this for us to give us an assessment of the potential, and they gave us about 3.4 billion barrels of unrisked resources over those 19 prospects. So the point I want to make out before I turn it over to Chris is that we're drilling our first well. And this is the first well of the entire fold belt. So it's opening up a play, and we have 19 some odd prospects identified, but on success, we think the running room is even more than that. These fold belts, when you look around the world, when they exist, they have large aerial extent. They actually transcend countries. So we have running room to the northwest under concession and running room to the southeast under concession. So we're on something that's pretty exciting, and Industry is watching this well very closely. What I'll do now is turn it over to Chris, and he'll walk through his thought process and what he sees in the Demerara Fold Belt.
Sure. Brian, can you see the cursor by chance?
No.
Okay. All right. I'll just talk to it. Okay. So what I'm going to take you through a little bit is the petroleum systems and the architecture that we see within the basins. And I say basins plural. There's actually two basins here. So this might be an analogous to what we see in the Permian in West Texas. There's the Kigbango Rift Basin, so under the red bar to the right and everything below, that's the architecture of the Rift Basin. And then the Fold Belt, what we'll concentrate on today, is below the blue bar. In the bottom left-hand corner, you can see the outline of the Ovambo Basin in blue, the Fold Belts in over to the east of that basin edge, and then the Kigbango Rift, which cuts through that older Ovambo basin. But so if you listen to Brian here, we were talking about the original team that came through that was working on the Rift Basin itself. So the three original wells are drilled down in the right-hand map. If you see those three pink spots, those are where those three wells drilled. These wells were extremely important for us because we were able to collect a lot of data. And as we go below that purple reflector that you see on the seismic labeled base of Rift, when we went through that event, we actually encountered the limestones and dolomites that we expect to encounter to the left of us in the Ovambo Basin. So we have that analogous data, which is extremely important for a geologist. And when we drilled those wells, we had multiple indications of hydrocarbons. We actually have 10 lines of evidence for liquids themselves, and we actually recovered oil from one of our wells that was drilled previously. The other thing that Brian mentioned is that we have 3 red stars noted at the top of the seismic profile here. This also tells us that we have an active petroleum system. We have both gas and oil. When we look at the petroleum system elements, we have a source that can produce hydrocarbons. We have a reservoir that can store the hydrocarbons. We have a container that can hold the hydrocarbons, which is the actual trap itself. And then we need a seal to hold in all those hydrocarbons. But the most important element is to be able to identify when you go into a frontier area, do you have an active petroleum system, meaning you have hydrocarbons that are in the basin itself. We have that. So if you take your eye to the left, you look at the reflectors that are in orange, green, and blue. These are our potential reservoir targets, with the orange and the green being our clastic reservoirs or sandstones, and then blue is the limestone. But what I really like about this prospect is this big fold belt. So if you look at those green polygons in the right-hand corner, some of these polygons are 25 kilometers long and 3 to 5 kilometers in width. So that means we have an extremely large trap. It's readily identifiable off of 2D seismic. And we have a lot of closure, meaning that we've got up to 500 to 600 meters of height where we can trap that hydrocarbon column, okay? So as we move to the next slide, this kind of gives you a plan view of what those fold belts look like. You can see in the middle of the slide, we have the Nangopo. You can see the green and the red contours. These outline the actual fold belt itself. And where that pink dot is, that says Prospect Nangopo, that's what we're currently drilling today. And we expect to move east to the prospect called Kambundu for the next well. The numbers associated with the table here are numbers that come from our third party, Netherland and Sewell, which identify the 19 prospects that we have mapped out as recon, and the numbers come from the third party themselves. The seismic panel just kind of gives you an idea, again, of the closures that we expect to encounter as we drill these prospects, and higher likelihood of having oil shallower and gas down deep. But we do expect to have liquid contents even within the gas itself. Real quickly, we'll go through a few of the prospects themselves. We really just want to give you an idea of what the inventory looks like. So we do this for all of our 19 prospects. We look at the seismic profile itself. That helps us delineate where we want to actually put that wellbore location. We show you a 2D surface map, which is in the middle. So we're at the upper panel is for the Nangopo prospect, which we're drilling now. And as you move over to the right panel, the cartoon schematic, it basically indicates that we're looking for approximately 9 different reservoirs throughout this wellbore itself. So we've got a lot of potential for multiple reservoirs, and we also have multiple play types. So today we focus on the full belt. Tomorrow we move to the Rift Basin. And we like to have that flexibility and also the ability to move between multiple reservoirs and multiple play types itself. The bottom panel is just the Kimbundu. It's the same central system that we map out for all of our prospects. And just to kind of give you an idea of, these are our first 4 kind of highest impact prospects that we see today on results from the Nangopo well. We'll decide whether we want to move to one of these prospects or another one of the 19 in our inventory. Brian, I'll turn it back to you.
This is our drilling schedule. We should mention that we own our own rig here, which is unusual. Oil and gas company. We bought this rig about 4 years ago in Louisiana during COVID at a heavy discount, sailed across the ocean and built it back up. And this is the rig that's on location. In fact, the team that rebuilt it 4 years ago is the same team that's operating it today. So our drill plan is to do back-to-back wells. Around Nangopo right here, these wells take roughly about 3 months to drill. We expect to be able to disclose results of this well probably in October timeframe, and then move over to the next prospect that Chris described, Kimbundu. We have testing equipment in country, access to it. Our plan will be to come back and production test both of these prospects on success, and then proceed to appraisal drilling, back-to-back appraisal wells, 1 more additional well on each structure. That will give us 4 wells in the full belt, and those 4 wells will bring on production via an early production system of trucking to Gufan train and then sell our crude to the coastline. We're also planning a 3D seismic. We just got our environmental clearance certificate approved this week, which means we have a green light to go ahead and proceed with this. This is going to be over in the Rift play that Chris described. We like the Rift play a lot. This is what the company drilled a number of years ago and found the oil. It just didn't have the seismic density to really have a well-developed inventory and select the best prospect. So we're shooting that seismic program and should be ready to drill a second play in a concession mid next year. So we're in a good position for that. I'm not going to talk too much about this. This is the well we're currently drilling Nangopo. Chris went over it. Objectives up shallow here. The main targets are these blue horizons, the carbonates. These are the rocks that actually had oil in it over in the Rift play. So we know this is working, and we know we have 4-way dip closure. So it's a really good spot. The well's going reasonably well. We're drilling some new rocks here, but it's relatively on budget and on time. And we expect to be drilling all the way through September and into October with this well. I talked earlier, and I'll just have a moment to talk about monetization. Oil for us is all about cycle time and cash flow. If we find any liquids on these 2 structures, we'll plan to deploy an early production system. We would truck oil about 120 miles to Gufan train, and then on rail to Walvis Bay, which would be our sales point. This is very unusual to have access to roads right in the concession. We don't have to build it. We've been on these roads ourselves. These are tarred, double-lane roads with a lot of 18-wheelers on there now because of the mining sector. So, and this, in fact, will be the first oil production in Namibia if we're able to find oil. Gas, this region of the continent is very gas poor. They're still experiencing brownouts in that region. We're very lucky that we have an electrical line going right through our concession. It's a 20 megawatt line. It goes down to a switching station that goes into South Africa. So our principal plan on gas discovery would be gas to power and get into a South African power pool. A little bit longer cycle time for gas and oil, but it's not going to be stranded, which is the important thing. And we're in a great area for demand, whether you go south into the South African power pool or the way we decide to reverse the line, go northeast in the Zambia industrial area, but well positioned for gas. I'm going to close on 2 slides here. This is the ESG program. It's something that we're very proud of. Recon got this right coming into the country. They committed $10 million Canadian for a small cap company for ESGs, and we're doing what I call generational investments. And I'd like to highlight it on the left-hand side. We're exploring a very rural part of Namibia where there's a lot of poverty, not crime, just poverty. And we worked with government. We identified 36 villages that were in need of water. And when I say in need of water, they had no potable water. The women in these villages had to walk 10 kilometers a day, twice a day, to get water from the river. And what they're experiencing is a lot of crocodile-human interface. They're losing up to 8 women a year. So we went out and drilled 36 solar-powered freshwater water wells for these villages. And this is making just a fundamental impact on the quality of life for these areas. During COVID, we gave $1.3 million for the country, and we're a big advocate of education. We're supporting almost 17 scholarships in country, which is really important. So the point I want to leave you here is that Recon does it right. We're very invested in the communities that we operate, and we're here for the long run. And we're here to develop prosperity for northern Namibia. So I'll leave it with this. I'm not going to go through all these investment highlights. Hopefully you've seen, heard the team. We've done this before, and we're confident we're going to build a company of scale here. Near-term catalysts are right in front of us, the Nagopa well and drilling beyond that. We've attracted a risk profile with a petroleum system. We've mitigated risk by developing Petroleum, and we have liquid potential in the Reconnaissance belt. But also, Recon really represents to the investor a pure play public investment exposures to Namibia's energy sector. There are very few entry points where you can have such upside on a drilling program as we have in Namibia. So we're pleased with where we are. We're pleased the company's been turned around the last year, and we're super excited about this drilling program that's ahead of us. With that, I'll turn it over to any questions that you may have.
Wonderful. Thank you, Brian and Chris. We do have lots of questions for you, but we are out of time. So we're going to send you these questions you can answer on your own. But a great presentation today. And please come back with some updates. We'd love to see you again.
Absolutely. We're exciting time for Recon. We'd love to have you on board.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you, gentlemen. We'll see you soon. All right. Stay with us, everyone. We'll be right back with Bioxytran.